Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 176. I forgot to do the podcast last week. I actually genuinely forgot to do it because I didn't really have anything I was itching to talk about. And then somehow, within like the last week, I was just flooded with a billion things to talk about. So I guess I'll start off because we didn't have any questions from last time. Remember, if you have any questions, you can leave them down in the comments below, and I'll get to them on the next episode. First, I want to talk about a funny little story from my week to kind of set the mood. We have some bummers. We got some real bummer drummers on this episode. So I want to talk about something kind of funny and charming. So we went out last week with a bunch of friends of ours. Kat and I did. And specifically, the occasion was that a friend of ours has a long distance girlfriend who is visiting, and so they planned. She's visiting for like a week or two or something, and he had planned a big event day where we were going to do a bunch of stuff, and then to celebrate. You know, everyone is a friend group to celebrate and hang out, and we can meet her and stuff like that. So the culmination of this day was at a Benihana's restaurant. I've never actually been to Benihana's. You'd think that my high school weeaboo self would have insisted upon it. But no, I've actually never been to Benihana's. If you don't know, Benihana's is a Japanese chain restaurant. They're kind of like sort of high scale chain restaurants. It's the kind of restaurant you go to for an event, you know. A lot of birthdays and stuff and like anniversaries on while we were there, because we could, you know, hear people singing happy birthday. Also it was our friend's anniversary when his girlfriend was visiting, so that was the other event. The main interesting thing about Benihana's is that the tables have like hot plate grills built into them, and during the course of your meal, assuming that you ordered something off of the Benihana hot plate part of the menu, a chef will come out and will prepare your food in front of you and do a bunch of fancy tricks and flip stuff around and toss stuff from like one hand into the other, and then do a bunch of like acrobatic juggler circus stuff for you. They're like a clown chef, yeah. So we go to Benihana's. There's like a group of like 9 or 10 of us. We order, and eventually our chef comes out to prepare the meals from the hot plate that people had ordered. Kat and I just got a sushi plate, so I don't think we got anything off the hot plate. So we were already like done. We split a sushi plate. We were done by the time he came out. But he was kind of a youngish guy. He seemed like he was sort of around our age. I never know because of facial hair. Also, he was wearing a mask, and I think he had facial hair because he pulled it down at one point to say something to us more clearly. But he seemed like he was sort of in our age range of like early 20s something, you know. And while he's making our food, and he's like chopping it up all fancy with like the little, what are those called? Is it a skillet? It's like the spatula thing that's just like the handle, and it goes straight into I guess that spatula does go straight into the little flipping part. Anyway, he's like doing his thing and being all fancy and stuff. And, you know, it's a little awkward to just be standing there, like, essentially performing in front of a bunch of people silently as they watch you. So I think that they're kind of encouraged to engage with the table and make conversation, which, by the way, seems very difficult. Seems like it requires a lot of dexterity and coordination. And the first thing he said was to Kat, was to my girlfriend, because Kat was there. So Kat's a plushie girl. I don't know if that's ever been established. She's a plushie girl, and she always carries a plushie or two with her everywhere. She usually has one like poking out of her bag, and then she has one that she like carries around in her hand all the time. And on this day, she was carrying one of her favorites, which was her, I believe it's the Good Smile Elfelt plush, Elfelt Valentine. And the guy asks, what character is that? And she goes, it's Elfelt from Guilty Gear. And he says, oh, Guilty Gear, I've been meaning to like get into that series for a while now. And everyone at the table looked at me and said, talk to Taigen. Ask Taigen about it. And he goes, oh, you play Guilty Gear? And I was like, yeah, I've been known. I've been known. I've been known to enjoy Guilty Gear a little bit in my private and public life. And he was just asking about like, yeah, so it's like a fighting game. Like, I'm not too into fight. Like, I played some Smash Ultimate. I own like a Switch, so I don't have too many. There aren't too many fighting games that are available on Switch. And I said, well, they got a Switch port that just came out. I'm like selling now. And we were just like going back, and every now and again, whenever he came back, whenever like he spoke up again, it was always to ask me another question. It was always to ask me another question about Guilty Gear. He asked like, why are the gears guilty? And I was like, well, so Guilty Gear is in reference to the main character whose name is Soul Bad Guy. He is a gear, which is like a bioengineered, like bio weapon, like a living weapon. And he was also responsible for creating the gear program that almost destroyed the world. And so he dedicated his life to stopping gears, and he feels guilty for it. So he's the guilty. He feels like responsibility for it. So he is the guilty gear. There's the line from GG1 where he literally says, "I am the guilty gear." And he's go, "Oh, that's actually like a lot more intuitive than I would have thought." And I was like, "Yeah, no." I almost recommended Wooly's Guilty Gear lore series, Heaven or Hell. And he goes, yeah, no, I've been meaning to get into it. And I was like, that's cool. Like once a month we get together in like an industrial warehouse in Belmont and play Guilty Gear together for like 7 hours in like a garage. And he goes, oh, cool. Like a warehouse? And I was like, yeah, no, it's like sick. It's a really good time. You can eat De Mendo's oranges. So we're like, this whole conversation is going on as he's preparing all of our food. Well, not all of our food. Some of our food. And then out of nowhere, after a lapse in conversation, he goes, is that the one with brisket? Or, Bridget? And I had to like do a double take. I actually couldn't believe he said that. And I said, oh yeah, Bridget is from Guilty Gear. And he goes, yeah, I actually first found it because of memes of her. And I pointed to Kat and I said, well, yeah, that's how I got her into Guilty Gear too. That's how I got her in on it. And he goes, oh, really? And she's like, yeah, I thought it was cool that there was like a trans woman who was like a cute girl in a fighting in Guilty Gear, my boyfriend's favorite thing. And and he goes, yeah, that's awesome. No, representation matters. I was like, dude, I can't believe I'm getting served up by the woke Benihana chef talking about Guilty Gear. Yeah, and he was like, yeah, I mean, I maybe I'd go play with people in person, but they always got me working here. And I was like, well, that's a shame. Maybe if you can find some time. That was a very odd, kind of fun experience. So shout out Zane, our woke Benihana chef. Next up, I want to do a little bit of a quick announcement, which is that you might have caught my stream or listened to the podcast last time when I was doing the Steam Next Fest demos. One of those was for a game called Pachinko TD. It was a really cute, charming, very fun little tower defense game. Excuse me. Where the board, instead of being like just a path that the enemies go down and that you set up towers along, the board is like a pachinko screen or like a pinball game type thing, where the enemies get like popped out from the side and they fall down, and you got to put your buildings along like the pachinko board for them to like bounce off of, like rudders. It was really cool, and it was a fun little game, and it reminded me a lot of like some kind of classic Flash game I would have played when I was like 9 on addictinggames.com. And I spoke positively of it on the stream and on my podcast. And the developer of the game reached out to me, sent me an email a few days ago to let me know that they saw my stream and they appreciated it, which is very nice. And that it is now released. So you can go buy Pachinko TD on Steam for like $5, like 5 or 6 USD. Which I don't know exactly how much content is in the game, but I think that's probably pretty worth it. I will have a link to that down below, and I'm saying this is not sponsored, although I did technically, I should mention that I did get, he did give me a Steam code for it, so I did receive something, although this was not sponsored, but I want to give that game a shout out. To do some indie game supporting. I don't think I could ever play Pachinko. I don't think I could ever do gambling. I watched a video randomly last night when I was kind of sleepy, and it like kept me up for like an hour longer just thinking, just like in like a bad feeling. It was called something like, I think it's got like 1 million views or something. It's like gambling addicts react to losing it all rage compilation. And I clicked on it out of like a morbid curiosity, and I was planning on it seemed very sensationalized. And I was like, well, I'll check it out. I'll click off after like 1 or 2 clips or something. And I watched like the whole 20-minute video because it was haunting. I think the title is a bit of a misnomer. It's almost like it's like the hook, you know? It's the hook to get you in. And then with like, oh, haha, I'm going to watch someone get totally owned. But the actual presentation of the video and the music and the clip selection is like extremely sad. There is no schadenfreude to be found anywhere in there. And it just kind of reinforced the fact that I don't think I will ever gamble. I don't want to get. Okay, so a couple things. So number one, gambling addiction is fucking. It gives me like a shudder. I genuinely had like a shudder while I was watching that video, because it is like an addiction, and it manifests in the form of, you can have an addiction to anything, right? But addiction specifically is so, I feel like it's so similar to drug addictions in the way that they're like behaving, like the desperation and like the high points, and there's this guy in this clip who has like a heart rate monitor on hand to show how high his heart rate is getting, and he's almost at like a heart attack level. He is close to literally having the heart rate you'd have, the blood pressure of a heart attack victim. Are you victimized by a heart attack? I don't know if that's the right word. And it's like the behavior of somebody who's like a crack addict, but they're in a generally lucid state, right? Like it's so they get to speak and commentate and talk, and you get to actually hear their thought process, and there's something just absolutely bone chilling about it. Like, there's this guy who's playing this, it's all mostly like online gambling, and he's just, it's literally just a 50-50 of just clicking a button, and then either you get a positive or negative multiplier on the amount that you put in. And he just keeps clicking it, and it keeps going negative. It keeps going negative, and he's losing money. His money is getting like 60% off, then halved, and then he goes up a little bit, and then he goes back down. And he just keeps clicking the button, and he keeps yelling. He keeps yelling like, stop, oh my God, stop it, oh my God. And there's just something so unsettling about it, because it's like, obviously he's speaking to the algorithm that is killing his money, that's taking all of his money. But in a way, like, it's kind of like he's talking to himself. You know? He keeps clicking the button that is ruining his life and telling it to stop. And it is such a scary picture of any kind of addiction, you know? It's real. Addiction is tough because it is not, you know, someone with an addiction, with an abuse problem for any kind of substance or activity or something, it's not the same kind of relationship that a non-addicted person has to that, you know? An alcoholic, if you're not an alcoholic, rejecting a drink is very different from an alcoholic person being given that choice. Like, it's literally a brain chemical alteration. It's not the same thing, but at the same time, you kind of have to put the responsibility, depending on the situation, on the addict. Like, if someone else is enabling it, or they're, you know, especially knowingly, or they're, you know, like they're bringing someone to a place that has if you take a gambling addict to Las Vegas, if you take an alcoholic to a party where there's going to be alcohol, right? That's not that is like enabling behaviors, right? That's not a fair situation to put them in. But otherwise, it's like you do have to give the responsibility of picking up the drink or putting down the money or picking up the needle or whatever onto the addict, because they're the only ones who can actually stop it. They're the only ones whose physical action can stop what they're doing. And it's I don't know, man. Watching gambling addicts is like just, oh God, it feels gross. It feels gross. It feels like you shouldn't be watching it, but it's so morbidly fascinating. You know, there's a good point that I think a lot of people make, which is to see gambling as not an investment, but a hobby instead. Not a hobby. Entertainment. It's entertainment, and it's if you get a thrill out of putting money down and maybe it going up, you know, setting aside a certain amount of money that is the maximum that you're going to spend, and then holding yourself to it and not going above that. And just like, if I lose it, then I lose it, then fine. I'm comfortable losing this. I'm putting this down because the thrill of hitting the 50-50 button is great enough to warrant $100 or something. Personally, that deters me even more. I think there's two things. Number one is, I don't think someone with a gambling addiction can do that. I don't think that's even reasonable to ask them about, to just control their spending. Like, the solution is actually to just get them away from the gambling entirely. It's not like, well, you just have to gamble more That's why all those, like, well, you got to gamble responsibly things are bullshit. Because it's like, someone with an addiction is incapable of gambling responsibly. Someone with any kind of addiction, an alcoholic cannot drink responsibly. Very, very, very few are going to be able to do that. You know, it's like, one drink is not enough. Sorry, what is it? One drink is too many because a dozen is not enough. Like, the same thing applies, right? It's bullshit to say that you should just be more responsible. The responsibility is in, like, even getting into the situation in the first place. Two is that, like, something I've realized about myself is that it is never, I actually kind of hate gambling, it makes me feel so much worse than it excites me or makes me feel good in any way. Like, even in like a video game, if I gamble a little and I lose money, if I lose like 5 New Vegas bottle caps, I'm like, I have to go kill myself. I have to delete my save and jump off a bridge. It's I cannot. Oh my god, just doing that with real money, I would be more stressed. The thought, it's weird that people don't have more of a negativity bias. That's what's really interesting to me about gambling addiction, is that you would think that the negativity bias would totally cancel it out. The idea that losing money is a loss hurts. The negative feelings from a loss are twice as bad as the good feelings from a win. And you would think that the idea would be preventative itself. Because that's how I feel. I'm like, if I have $10 and I'm like, okay, I can waste this money and get nothing out of it, or I could potentially get $20. That's the most, well, that's the other thing is you have to, is that in order for the gamble to be worth it, like psychologically, you need to, the minimum amount that you're willing to get back, or that you will, that you would have to get back, is like double the amount. You need double. If you go like 1.5, you're not going to feel great about it. If you go double, you're like, okay, I feel fine about that. Because you have to offset how bad losing it all would feel. Which might be, well, that might actually be it. That might actually be why they keep chasing after it. That's the thing with gambling addicts, is that they can never walk away. You know, like that. There's a lady who won and then lost $14 million. You know, never have to work again kind of money. And it's like, well, what if that could be doubled too? What if I did another one? And I'm not going to stop unless I hit at least doubles. And then you hit double and you're like, well, I could double that too. I hit like, okay, Kat loves these things. They're called blind bags. You might have seen them if you go to the store or something. They're basically like little gachapon, get a random thing out of this bag. And it's usually like, she loves the ones that are little keychains. She always has a bunch of little merchandise and collectible things hanging off of her bag that she clips on. And so she loves these things. I absolutely hate them because when I look at the actual product that I'm getting, it's not like good enough to justify spending like $10 on it. I'd spend like $7 at most. At most, I'd spend maybe $5 on it. Realistically, that's my view of like the actual item. But you're spending double on that for, or even more sometimes, like $13, $11, something like that, for, I guess, the thrill of getting a mystery little keychain of a character from a thing. And I absolutely hate them. I can't stand them. Because I'm like, why? Okay, I could spend more money to risk not even getting something that I'd want. Or I could just spend the same or less amount of money to get something that I would actually want and know that I want. And I don't get it. I don't get it at all. The other thing is that gambling, it's like, even if I went and I won a bunch of money, how much am I going to lose out on that to taxes? I'm going to lose a bunch of that on taxes. You know, gambling income is taxed. You're required to report that to the IRS. And that's more on my that's on my mind a lot more now, because I just recently filed my taxes for the first time. Segue into story. We'll talk about video games at some point. Just shh. I filed taxes for the first time at the ripe age of 23 years old. I figured that it would be a good time to do it, just because I literally got a tax form from a place that I did some contract work for. So I thought it's probably my best interest to act on that, and better be safe than sorry. So I don't know how the tax system works or filing works in other countries, but The way that it works in America is, well, it's interesting because the entire system is set up for people who aren't me. For people who are not named Tigan. Essentially, the tax system in America is pretty straightforward. It's a lot more straightforward, assuming that your income comes from like an employee-employer relationship, in which case you would get a form that's called a W-2. I do not have that. In fact, I have multiple income sources, none of which are from an employer. So, they just like don't know what to do about that, and the actual form that you would have to fill out, or any of the a lot of the services you could go to, are not helpful, and they just don't know how to handle you. Which was, you'd think that they would be better at. So, a couple things about the way that my finances work. I'm saying this because, number one, it's interesting and I learned a lot, and it was a fascinating experience, and maybe this could be intriguing to someone else. So I have multiple income sources, and I have to be considered differently based off of what income source it is. So in regards to Patreon, my Patreon money, I am technically considered a business because I am giving a product to people that they are subscribing to me for. They are paying me money for. In regards to my contract work, I'm a contractor. I do sporadic contract work and stuff like that when I can find it every now and again for just like little short one-off payments or a small series of payments sometimes. So in that regard, I am a contractor, and I fall under what's called a 1099 NEC for non-employer compensation. So here's the double-edged sword of the way that my finances work. So if you have a job, a regular job, and you have a boss who pays you, every time you get your paycheck, the taxes that you pay to the government are already taken out of that paycheck. They are taken out before you even get it, to the state and the federal government. And then what you're doing when you go to file your taxes at the end of the year is that you've given up X amount of money to the government in taxes over the course of the year. And then you go and you figure out, based off of your situation, basically like what little discounts you qualify for. Like, do you have changed based on like, are you married? Do you have dependents like children that you live with or that depend on you financially? Do you qualify for this thing? Do you qualify for that? And then the government says, oh, okay, well, we actually only need this amount. We needed like $1,000 less from you. You got $1,000 less. We only needed $8,000 instead of $9,000 from you. And so they're like, okay, well, we'll give you the difference. We'll give you the $1,000 as a refund because we didn't actually need it. Haha, tee. And that's why people get a big refund. And my mom is always excited for her tax refund. The income that I get from Patreon and from all of my contract work so far, it might change depending on like the employer. But so far, I this is applied to every single contract job I've done. None of that income is taxed. Sorry, none of that income has taxes taken out of it. It is all untaxed at the point that I get it. So I don't pay taxes throughout the year. I do not pay taxes on every Patreon check that I get. I lose some of it to platform cuts. Some of it goes to Patreon. Some of it goes to PayPal. But I am not taxed on that income when I get it. That's one edge of the blade. Cool, yeah, I get the basically full value of my money, of the money that I earned. The other edge of the sword is that because I don't pay throughout the year, I have to pay in one lump sum at the end of the year, or I guess the beginning of the next year when tax season comes around. So, I've talked to a friend who suggested maybe filing quarterly because it can be kind of stressful. I can imagine it being kind of stressful to like have to calculate about how like have enough saved up for when I inevitably have to pay taxes at the end of the year. And it's a very unique, it's kind of a unique circumstance in terms of the system. So my brother, so here's the thing, because of that, I don't want to pay someone to do my taxes, right? Like, that's a negative investment. If I go and pay someone or I pay for some service to do my taxes for me, I guess I could have the peace of mind, but also like I'm like losing, I don't want to lose more money on it. So my brother was like, just go to TurboTax. They have a free option because my younger brother has had to pay taxes before because he's had a real job longer than me. And he's had a job where he's had to earn enough to pay taxes. And I said, okay, cool. So I went to TurboTax and I was like, I'll try this out. I went through the process and I got everything squared away. And then I get to the end where they review the process and they say, oh, you've actually got like 11 different lines that are missing fields. And I was like, what? What am I missing? So I go all the way back trying to find out what information I didn't fill in. And one of the first things they ask you is, do you have a W-2? You say no. I say no. They say, cool, next step. Do you have money from savings from investments? And I'm like, I made like $1 in my savings account over the course of the year, I guess. And they're like, cool. And then I click away to the next part. Well, it turns out that the part that was missing was all of the stuff about my actual income. I just kind of figured that we would get to that eventually, and I was a little bit surprised when I got towards near the end of the process and I had not actually entered any information from any of the forms I'd gotten from any contractors or had to fill in anything I got from Patreon or anything like that. So it turns out that when they asked me if I'd made any money from investing, there was a button underneath that I'd sort of missed. I sort of skimmed over for whatever reason. Maybe I'm just blind. That's why I triple check everything when I'm doing this. That said, add more income sources. And I was like, oh, maybe that. And I click on it and it gives me a whole list of different types of income. One of them is 1099 NEC. And I say, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I want to. So I click on that one. I'm going to fill in that information. And they go, oh, so sorry to hear about that. If you want to have multiple income sources, that requires TurboTax Premium, which is $60. Sorry about that. Oh, sorry. And I was like, well, wait, so this is just completely useless if you don't have a W-2? Just genuinely? Like, if you, unless you literally, this is like how they're fucking scumbags and they get you to pay for their premium trial or premium version of whatever, is they make it as restrictive as possible so that if you have any income that does not fit specifically, like, well, do you have a W-2 and do you have investments? If you have anything besides that, if you did literally if you got like $2,000 because you did some contract work over the year, or you sold something as part of like a little small business on the side, impossible. You cannot file with them. I was like, well, fuck this. That's bullshit. So I'm kind of floundering for a bit, trying to figure out how I can actually file this. I go look up the actual 1040 form, which is the tax form. What you're doing when you go to these websites is you're just filling in information, and when you put the information in on the web page, it's just plugging that in to a 1040 automatically for you, just using more clear language to describe what you actually need. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh man, I do not feel comfortable filling this out myself. So I end up where else but the IRS website. And on the IRS website, they have a tool that you can use to find services to do your taxes. And they said, you might even be able to get everything filed for free. And I was like, okay, well, fat chance at that. I just saw what TurboTax tried to pull. Any other company, I imagine they're going to be just as annoying about it. I end up putting in some information, and then they spit out 2 websites at me, one of which is Free Tax USA. And the rest of this podcast is dedicated to Free Tax USA, because I was actually able to file my taxes completely for free. I don't know if it's just because I qualified for a certain thing because I'm under a certain income level or whatever. But I got the whole thing filed for free. I got it sent out. I got to put in all of my income sources. I covered everything across the board, and it was easier. It was better laid out, and it was more clear, which I thought was crazy. Part of that could have just been that could have been assisted by the fact that I had already kind of been through the process one time with TurboTax. But going through it with Free Tax, I genuinely felt like they structured things in a way that was a lot easier to understand. And like I got done with all the important stuff like out of the way first, and then on to like what cuts and breaks can I get. So I did end up I don't want to say how much I paid in taxes. It wasn't a whole lot because I don't have a whole ton of personal income. But I will say that I think the funniest part of the process was when we got to business expenses. And I did get to write off buying Harvester as a business expense. Which I've mentioned that to people. Like I mentioned that to my mom, and she was like, really? And it's like, I mean, when I looked it up on their website, it is a business expense can be like, if you bought pens for your office, if you bought like pens as office supplies, that's a business expense. Well, I'm like, okay, well, shit. I mean, my business revolves around making videos. I bought a game to make a whole video about for a whole month. That seems like a business expense to me. So I finally get to live the dream of writing off video games as business expenses on my taxes. Not that it was, I got it on sale for like $2 because I was like, ooh, and I already owned it on GOG, so I felt kind of stupid for buying it again, but I guess I just own it twice now. I forgot I owned it on GOG. So it was a completely minuscule amount. I just did it to have fun. It was just kind of fun to be able to say that I did that. So shout out to Free Tax USA for saving my bacon and making it genuinely a lot easier, and for doing it for actually free. Thank God. Speaking of, actually no, not really. Speaking of taxes. Anyway, that was my interesting story. We're gonna get on to some news. 40 minutes into the podcast. So, we got some bummers today. We got some downers, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm a little bit. I'm going back and forth on which one that I want. I think I'll start with. Okay, I'll start with this one first because the next one is a little bit. I don't know, darker. Actually, darker. So, Bobby Kotick is in the news. Bobby Kotick is suing Gizmodo and Kotaku, right? Yes. Gizmodo and Kotaku for, I think, slander? Slander against him. Defamation. It's a defamation lawsuit. Over concerning some specific verbiage that they used when introducing him in some articles. So essentially, there's a news story from a little while ago that Bobby Kotick was interested in buying TikTok. That didn't happen, but it was a news story. And Gizmodo and Kotaku both reported on it, and in their reporting, they felt the need to mention, probably because they're, gaming news outlets, you might know Bobby Kotick as I believe Kotaku called him disgraced, the disgraced former CEO of Activision Blizzard King. And referencing the, well, you guys know, the big thing that happened. Can I say I am really proud of everyone for not calling it Blizzardgate? I want to give everyone a pat on the back. Maybe it's because the average video game audience isn't like 40 plus. But thank you for not just calling it Gate. So like something Gate. Because that would have been really easy. We don't actually have a term for it. We just have the big Blizzard kerfuffle fuckfest from a few years ago, where they were investigated for some of the most rampant, disgusting institutional abuse and covering up of sexual misconduct and harassment of their employees that I have ever seen in this industry. It was the biggest case of the sort that has ever happened in this industry. Ever. It's the biggest one. So this comes after Kotick previously made... I wasn't going to talk about these. I was just going to let it fall to the wayside. But because he insists on this narrative that the allegations... so here's the thing. Despite the fact that everyone knows that this happened, his claim is the classic legal cop-out, where he says, well, we never had a trial, and a court never decided, they never ruled that we did anything. They never ruled that any misconduct actually happened. We just settled. So what happened was, no one at Blizzard got sexually harassed. No one at Blizzard had anything bad happen to them. We just happened to pay out $54 million to the not victims, legally not victims of our company. That just kind of, look, no one proved anything happened. It's just like a shitty cop-out scumbag excuse. He's suing over it. And this is following statements he made a couple weeks ago on some shitty fucking podcast for billionaires that people who think they're going to be billionaires one day listen to, and they don't know that that's not going to happen to them. It's some podcast called Grit. It's a business podcast that, yeah, their audience is probably temporarily embarrassed millionaires. Is probably how they would identify themselves. Where he said some of the craziest, most fucked up shit I've heard in a bit. He said, let's get some quotes here. This is coming from, so the lawsuit thing was from the Courthouse News Service. This next article is from, the earlier one is from Rock, Paper, Shotgun, courtesy of Nick Rubin. Let's see. So not only was he well, no one ever found anything. He says, essentially the host says, there was a petition, because at one point there was a petition to get Kotick removed as CEO, because there was allegations that he knew about the misconduct happening and didn't do anything about it or turned a blind eye. It's been a bit since I kept up with that whole case pretty closely. I don't remember exactly if it was ever proven that he really knew, I honestly wouldn't be too surprised either way. I can see him potentially, I can see the Blizzard management potentially hiding that because of the way that it was structured. We know that the abuse was not equal across every team. We know that the Overwatch team didn't really have anything of the sort. It was mainly, as I get it, the World of Warcraft team. and maybe some of the Diablo team. But like Overwatch, for instance, was not really a part of that, as far as I can tell. As far as anyone knows, and I believe that people on the team even came out to say that the cultures were different depending on the part of the company, which at a published developer and publisher that big, I can see that. Is Blizzard a publisher? I guess not. I guess Activision is the publisher. So he basically said his response to this guy bringing up the petition to remove him is, that was fake. Not only does he say that was fake, that if he wants to claim innocence, that he didn't know, okay, fine. There's like a gray area where it's like, well, we don't know if he knew. He does say that, like, well, if, someone has misconduct, then you just fire them immediately. And then he goes off the fucking deep end into some of the craziest class warfare shit I've ever seen, where he says not only did he not know about the abuse was fake. He genuinely says, let's see. He says, I can tell you what happened. The Communication Workers of America Union started looking at technology. They kept losing because they represented the News Guild, Comcast, and they realized that they were losing members at a really dramatic rate. So they got to figure out, how do they get new union members? So they targeted a bunch of different businesses. Google, some other tech companies, Tesla, SpaceX, and us. It's the power of unions. I didn't really understand this until we went through this process. They were able to get a government agency, the EEOC, one of the equal employment something, and a state, I forgot what EEOC was for. And I believe that's the federal body, and a state employment agency called the Department of Fair Employment and Housing to file fake lawsuits against us and Riot Games, making allegations about the workplace that weren't true. They're so clever. They realized that would be a thing where they could come into a company because we pay well, we have great benefits. That's fucking false. Their playtesters couldn't afford food on the fucking campus because you didn't pay them well enough. You paid them fucking dirt. And they could say, hey, the culture is bad. People are harassed or they're retaliated against. There's discrimination. The guy and the lady who ran CWA, they are really smart. They came up with this plan, hired a PR firm, and they started attacking our company. They got these two agencies to file... Dude, this is like, when I say fucking deep end, they got these two agencies to file these lawsuits to claim there was some sexual harassment. We didn't have any of that. Ultimately, they had to admit this was not truthful. I've seen another company they knew in advance. A lot of the press was made up by non-union activists. This is insane, bold-faced, fucking devil worshiper lying going on. The serpent's tongue. Holy shit. Okay, if you have no idea what the fuck he's mentioning here or what's so wrong with this. Let's start with like near the end, which is crazy. He claims the fucking union came in and conspired. They got two government agencies to file lawsuits about complete myths. Besides the fact that there is an overwhelming amount of substantiated evidence, of eyewitness reports, of dude, there was a fucking segment on this podcast that ran for like 3 months straight every week about new news about the Blizzard lawsuit and the harassment scandal. There was so much information. It is mind-boggling to say that there was nothing going on, to say that it was fabricated. Secondly, To say that the union got them to do this, I'm sorry, Bobby. Do you not remember that this started when a woman at Activision fucking died? When she died in her hotel room? Do you don't remember that that's when the state of California launched an investigation into your company and stumbled across the Blizzard thing? Do you not remember that those were the facts of the case that happened that were like material reality? Absolute fucking like satanic shit from this guy. This is like evil. Bobby Kotick is a legitimately evil person to be pulling this now. Again, if he was just saying, I didn't know about it and he just claimed ignorance, fine. He wants to distance himself from it. He wants to move on and fucking retire or whatever. Or be in some other shitty CEO for like another 20 years and then retire. But to come out and lie about the insane abuse and harassment that went on, and to say that it was a union conspiracy, which, by the way, I think it should be noted, the CWA, the Communication Workers Union, Communication Workers of America Union, are not, as I understand it, the primary union at Activision Blizzard. The primary union was formed out of that. It was empowered. They started with the CWA, and then they formed their own in-house union, the ABK Alliance, I think, the Activision Blizzard King Employee Alliance, for the employees to represent themselves against the company. So if they wanted to get union membership, I don't think that they fucking did a very good job. Well, the whole thing is him mischaracterizing what a union even is. He treats it as if it's like a business. A union is not a business. A union is the representation of the employees at a company. They aren't looking for customers or clients. What does he think this is? Some of the absolute scummiest bullshit I have seen. And now he's basically taking this. It's not just distancing himself from it. He is going on the offensive with this new lawsuit to actually claim denialism of the entire thing, purely because instead of going to a trial, Blizzard decided to pay out and settle with the victims. Absolutely insane. I hope he kills himself. Is that extreme to say? I hope he kills himself. from the bottom of my heart. You can't say that people... So what I realize is that you can't say that people should die. You can't say that people should die. And I do wish death upon a number of people. But you can't say that because that's potentially a threat of violence in this new country. But if it's self-inflicted, then that doesn't count. It doesn't count. Although it kind of hits harder. He should. Post-editing recording Tigan coming in here because right immediately after it, in the part that I am cutting out right now, I said some crazy shit that I think had some unintended, could have had some unintended effects or messaging to certain people with depressions or suicidal thoughts or all that. And I want to extend all the love in the world to those people in the wake of me joking about Bobby Kotick hopefully killing himself. There are certain people, I would be fine if they just died, right? I would be fine. Fucking if Elon Musk dropped dead, that would be fucking awesome. That would be great for the world. But you can't say that someone should like go out and shoot that guy. So instead, this is my way around it, and it's kind of annoying that, you know, instead of people who destroy the world getting any kind of, the people who die never seem to be the ones who deserve it, you know? It feels like the scummiest, worst people on the planet always happen to get off scot-free, and all the wonderful people get struck with famine and disease and shitty conditions and suicidal thoughts and depression. Why can't that happen to a Jeff Bezos, you know? Why can't you? Suicidal people, do you ever wish that you could transfer your suicidal thoughts onto someone else who you think deserves it more? Let me know in the comments below. Do you cast evil spells? Do you cast hexes? Anyway, here's what happened right after that. Much love. Oh, what the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? Was that lightning? Oh my god. I invoked something evil. I have to get off of this. I have to get off of this topic. What the shit? It's been storming outside. Hopefully my power doesn't go out. Let's see. This is related. I think that this is actually kind of closely related to the next news story, our next downer. Former Ubisoft bosses on trial in France accused of sexual harassment. So, this is a case that has been a long time coming. Essentially, in late 2020, mid to late 2020, Ubisoft was rocked by a series of their own misconduct allegations that never got as far as the Blizzard ones in terms of the publicity, for a couple of reasons. Number one is that a lot of them happened in France, and therefore a lot of the sources were in French. And two was that the Blizzard thing was big because it was an undeniable government investigation with multiple different companies and an absolute deluge of information coming out in the fallout of it. The Ubisoft case happened technically a little before that, but it has been progressing steadily ever since over the course of the last 5 years. These things unfortunately take a very long time. It was also partially overshadowed by the Blizzard thing for those same reasons. Because I remember when it came out. I remember when that stuff came out. I want to say I mentioned it. But there was just not as much information. It was a much slower case compared to the Blizzard thing. The Fuckfest, I think I called it. So essentially, the Ubisoft trial this is now a trial, and I should mention that this is not from like a regular gaming outlet. This is on France 24, courtesy of. Do they not have an author on this? I think at the bottom. They do not. That's odd. There's no author attached to this, as far as I don't see a name. Anyway. So this is France 24. This is like a real ass news organization in France, which means that this is fairly substantial. It was last week when this came out. I couldn't find that many English sources, but they have this translated into English handily. Here's what happened. This is mainly concerning 3 top executives at Ubisoft in France. I'll read from the article. After the appearance of anonymous testimonies on social media that accused the company of a toxic work culture and alleged predatory behavior by powerful managers, Ubisoft in 2020 launched a probe and announced the departure of several senior executives. So these people have already, for the most part, resigned or been booted out. It concerns 3 people: Serge Hescot? I'm not sure. The chief creative officer and the company's second in command, he resigned. Thomas Francois, vice president of editorial and creative services, and a different senior executive named Guillaume Patrus, I'm not sure, Patrux, were dismissed for serious misconduct. So one of them resigned, two of them were dismissed. All three of them deny the claims. Haskell categorically denies having harassed a single colleague. That's going to be very funny when we get further down the article. So the accusations are fucking weird and bad. And okay. You know, I don't want to like power scale harassment or anything. So I'm not going to say that this is better or worse or less bad than something. It's more of like, there's things that you kind of understand, like, he groped a lady in the office. And then there's like a couple, like, what the fuck things? The groping is not part of this. I'm talking, this is, some of the accusations are, these are the what the fuck things. Employees have complained of near daily public humiliation and hazing. So Francois is probably the most under the most fire, that he did the most shit. Between January 2012 and July 2020, Francois is alleged to have habitually watched pornographic films in the open plan office and commented on the appearance of female employees. He is also accused of planting surprise kisses on the lips of employees and insulting some by calling them ugly or slut. So that's kind of like more understandable. Then you get kind of like a doozy of a couple in a row. He supposedly forced a young woman who was wearing a skirt to do a headstand in the office. He then tied the same woman to a chair and placed her in an elevator and sent it to another floor. Okay. And then he drew on her face with a marker, a felt tip pen, and forced her to attend a meeting without allowing her to clean herself up. It's crazy because like right underneath this is another allegation of him being prosecuted for allegation of attempted sexual assault. He attempted to forcibly kiss a young employee as she was held by other colleagues. And it's like, okay, well, I can understand that. But for some reason, that like triple whammy it forms this pit in my stomach that just feels really off. It's like I ate something that isn't agreeing with me. There's like a really disturbing, like fetishistic humiliation and like power abuse with those examples. And it's like, According to an investigative report seen by AFP, which is, this is a French thing. AFP is a French thing. It's a French thing. It's a news outlet, as far as I understand. According to an investigative report seen by AFP, Francois encouraged his subordinates to act in the same way, using his influence and high hierarchical position within the company to this end. Which, yeah, that's how this happens, is the person at the top sets the standard. And if this is true, and I mean, it's going to court, so I don't know. If this is true, it makes sense that anyone underneath him or anyone around him at his same level would then also, who has predatory inclinations, would also feel comfortable. They would feel comfortable engaging in that and indulging in those. Also, in the hiring process, we saw this at Blizzard as well, is that predatory people in positions of power who set the standard also have a sort of filtering effect on non-predatory people. Predators and bullies and anyone who kind of seeks to harass someone or pick on somebody have that kind of like sixth sense, that sense that someone they know who is safe to do their bullshit around and who isn't, and who's going to call them out and who isn't going to be down with it. And over time, if you're setting the standard and you're hiring people or you're in charge of, team dynamics and stuff like that, there are many ways that you can just slowly pressure out people who are combative towards your behavior. And over time, it becomes kind of manicured. The culture becomes manicured into a predatory, abusive, toxic workplace environment. Hasko is accused of lewd behavior and posing intrusive questions of a sexual nature, as well as racist comments and behavior. There's a pretty gross account of a Muslim employee who there were some jihadist attacks in Paris in 2015. And after that, he asked her if she agreed with ISIS, if she was down with ISIS. Obviously a what the fuck kind of question. Apparently she had her desktop background at work changed to images of bacon sandwiches. And also during Ramadan, she would walk in sometimes to find food placed on her desk. Which is... all three of these are religious-based harassment. It's odd that we don't have, like, a term in English for, like, religious bigotry. Like, we have racism, sexism, so on. Homophobia or something like that. We don't have one for religion. We don't have, like, religious persecution. We don't have, like, a single word for that for some reason. But, yeah. If true, very bad shit. Unacceptable behavior. To treat an employee like that. The third defendant, Petru, is accused of psychological harassment. They don't go into any details on that, but if he was anything like Francois, then it's possible it was kind of a similar nature, forcing employees to do this or that. What has Guillaume Patreau done? Let's see. What's he done? He's a former game director, is how they credit him. Production on Prince of Persia Classic. Red Steel 2. Design on a line designer on the crew. Driver San Francisco. Watch Dogs. Okay. Whenever I hear line designer, it makes me think of a scriptwriter, but I know that's not what it is. Yeah, so they call this a desire to humiliate in the article. That's a direct quote from the lawsuit, I imagine. Investigators have spoken to dozens of witnesses during the probe, but, quote, many refused to file a complaint for fear of reactions from the video game community. And this was actually the part this was a different part that really, really bothered me. What they're saying here is that they were afraid to speak out about the humiliation and harassment that they received. Because they themselves would be harassed and completely outnumbered by a bunch of fucking losers on the internet. I'm spewing a lot of bile. I'm saving a lot of bile for these last two segments, because I genuinely, there is an entire group of these fucking guys on YouTube who I have to share a space with, unfortunately, as much as I try to distance myself from them, whose entire persona, whose entire online presence and business is based around getting people upset at things that they don't need to be upset at. People who are just, they are just like emotional rage farmers. And there was this giant video. There was an 11-hour video created by Mars Girl, of all people. Does anyone remember Mars Girl? I remember Mars Girl. That was a blast from the past. That got released a little while ago about Vic Mignogna. Vic Mignogna was an English dub anime voice actor who was accused of, he had, I believe over the course, once people started talking about it, hundreds of allegations of inappropriate behavior with women and very young girls. Never like under 18, but always really, really close. And basically, he was just a huge creep who could not stop groping women. And this was corroborated from multiple different companies, hundreds of different people who worked with him professionally and privately, and people who knew him. There was like, everyone has a Vic Mignogna story kind of thing. And a huge chunk of that video is dedicated to the absolute nightmare that the situation turned into because of a small militia of angry men on the internet who believed, because the guy on their screen told them so, that Vic Mignogna, all these hundreds of accusations against him, and genuinely hundreds across 20 plus years. The fact that he is like banned, 3 different companies have done internal investigations on him, and he is banned from the premises of like Sentai Filmworks. Actually, they're all conspiring against him because he's a man and he's Christian and he believes in God. And they are the devil cultural Marxists. And they are trying to besmirch him because they hate God and goodness. And that's why they're all going after Vic Mignogna. And I look at these people and these absolute fucking morons, and these morons who enable them, who promote it and profit off of it. And I have nothing but disdain. I have nothing but disdain for those people. And ugh. And when I read that there were people who had been mistreated by their company, who were upset, who were worried that they shouldn't speak out, that they had to stay anonymous because some fucking guy is going to come and tell them that they're a liar, and they're going to send them death threats, and they're going to invite so much insane harassment towards them that could get physical, who knows, that it just was not worth it mentally. That you would rather endure a workplace culture where you are being shamed and humiliated and abused than go up against, than potentially fix it, solve it, and try to combat that. But you would invite something even worse. And I have nothing but disdain for these people. I think that they are horrible people. I look at the people who make these videos and who do these streams, and I think that they are horrible people. And it is very upsetting to me. And you know what? All of these fucking guys who claim to be about like the fucking, we're gotta save video games. Where the fuck were they? Where the fuck? All these guys are fucking hacks. They are all fucking hacks. They do not give a shit about video games as an art form or an industry or anything, or any of the people who actually make them. They have no fucking love for any of this shit. I'm getting upset now. They have no love for any of this shit. They just want the fucking jingly thing in front of their eyes that reaffirms their worldviews and makes them feel comfortable because they're so fucking miserable and stupid and shitty. I'm getting immature now. I bet every single one of these fucking guys, is gonna has made a dozen or more videos about how there's a black guy in Assassin's Creed now. No, a fucking part of a Japanese like popular guy that existed is in a fucking video game that already like does shit like that. No, I really care about historical accuracy. Ubisoft's management covered up sexual harassment. What? I don't even know. What? I just care about the black people in the video game. Fuck these guys. I can't stand. I want to be nothing like these people. I have no desire other than to be absolutely nothing like these fucking losers. Jesus Christ. Maybe this is hitting me on a more personal level because I am a YouTuber with an audience. And you can see firsthand, not just as someone who's been on YouTube for a while as a viewer and a creator, that like that the way that you shape and affect your audience. And I've seen so many of these guys negatively impact people's lives and make them more angry and hateful and bigoted. And to encourage those people. And they are like little mouthpieces of hatred. It's fucking scum. They're scum. And I can't stand them. They're scum and I can't stand them. It's like, you can name names. It's like, well, for the same reason, right? Like, I have people in my head right now. There's people in my head right now, and I just don't want to fucking deal with it. I don't want to fucking deal with it. Because you're like, oh, well, I have such a small platform. They don't give a fuck. They don't care how small my platform is. They would harass. Was there an earthquake just now? Was that what that was? What the hell is going on? Okay, a bunch of my friends are talking in a group chat about an earthquake. My emotions! This is like a romance novel. Capital R romance novel where the emotions of the protagonist affect the environment around them. I am quaking with rage. I heard a rumbling. I thought that was just a really strong wind. Okay, well, anyway, I actually didn't feel that hard. California things. Fuck, what was I saying? I gotta calm down. These people will like take the smallest slight, and because it doesn't matter how important it actually is. These people have no goals. They have no morals or objectives. Their objectives are entirely short-sighted. They have them. It's just, I need something new. Like, let's say that everything, was that a 4.2? Jesus. Let's say that like everything around, let's say that everything they hate went away. Do you think they'd just stop? Do you think they would just stop? Of course not. Of course not. They would keep fucking going. They would find something new. They would find something new to go on about. They're to just whinge endlessly, more and more microscopic things to focus on. Like, that's the same kind of reactionary right-wing politics that they fall under. Is like, well, we have to keep finding different groups of people to make to boogeyman and to make into an enemy. Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, remember that quote from earlier in the article where the guy, was it Francois, where he said like, I don't know anything, nothing like that happens. Following an internal survey, Ubisoft said in 2020 that about 25% of its employees had been victims of professional misconduct at work or were witnesses to it. Do you know how fucking crazy that is? A quarter of your employees have been victims or been witness to professional misconduct? That is fucking ludicrous. Especially for how many employees. Ubisoft has a lot of employees. dude. Ubisoft has a lot. That's one of the reasons that they're fucking struggling right now, is they have so much goddamn overhead because they overhired. They have historically overhired, and they're just like a completely flailing, bloated mess. And 25% of that in 2020, that is absurd. That is fucking nuts. Any further updates on that, I will try to keep my eye on. Again, court cases often move pretty slowly. But if something comes up and it is substantial, then I will try to talk about it, because I would like to cover these things, because I actually give a fuck about this industry and the quality of games that come out. You know, I happen to think that video games, you know, if everyone's happy working at a developer, working at a studio, there's not a guarantee that the game is going to come out good. But I can certainly tell you that if everyone is miserable, or like half the staff is miserable because they're being harassed every single day, and the working conditions suck, and the hours suck, and the pay is bad, I would call those adverse to the goal of making a good product, to the goal of making a good game, you know? I care about video games, I care about the industry, and I care about the people who work in it. I care about the people who work in the industry, which is a leap of logic that some people just can't make. You know, we can talk about individual creative decisions and all that. We'll talk about that after the guy who is tying up an employee to a chair and sending her to a different floor of the building to humiliate her. We'll talk about that after that guy is out and that shit doesn't happen anymore. And then we can have a discussion about fucking who's really ruining the video game industry. I wonder. It's probably the people making it. It's probably the people who are all the victims of this shit. Good Lord. Speaking of corporations, we watched Severance. The first season came out in 2022. It's a thriller mystery thing. It's on Apple TV Plus, which is why I never watched it. I heard it was really good. I'm also just not a big watcher unless Kat puts something on for me. And we hung out with some friends a few weeks ago, and they were like, "We're going to show you the first two episodes of Severance, Tigan." And I watched it, and I thought, hey, this is pretty intriguing. I would actually be interested in seeing the rest of the show, at least the first season, because the second season is airing right now. Actually, the final episode comes out this week, and so Kat and I have watched the whole series up till now. I'm going to talk a little bit about it and kind of some observations that I have. I think that until the final episode is out, I don't feel comfortable making like an entire super broad definitive statement about it, because it's a mystery and there is a lot to that has not been revealed yet that I think is important, that is going to be important. So like the biggest mystery of the show has not been revealed yet. I'm assuming that's going to be in the last episode, which is like over an hour long, apparently. It's like an hour 15. So I still do have some observations about the first two seasons that I would like to get on the record. But before that, I will at least recommend the show. I will say, yes, I think you should watch it. It is many people would call it a slow burn series. I would call it patient. A lot of stuff does happen, but it's not very obvious. It's not obvious what that affects. There's kind of a rippling butterfly effect. The show really takes its time, but interesting things are consistently happening. Mind you, Katrina is not the most interested in slow burn stories, and she loves the show. She is really engaged by it, and we're both really into it. So I think that should be a don't let that deter you. I guess I should get the premise of the show out of the way. Essentially, Severance takes place in a near future setting where a new procedure has been invented called severing, or severance. Essentially, severance is a little thing that they implant in your brain. There's a little chip in your brain. And when you when you enter a certain like field, you become a different person. The way that this is employed, the main way that this technology is employed in the show, is that there is a medical corporation, some kind of biomedical corporation called Lumen Industries. And they have an entire underground floor called the Severed Floor. And the main characters work on the Severed Floor. So what happens is they take an elevator down, and there's some kind of field or something on the way there that switches them to literally a different personality. Essentially, when you wake up from being severed, you have no knowledge of who you are on the outside. You don't know what your name is. You don't know what you do out there. You don't know if you have a family. You don't know you don't know where you live. You don't know where you are. You do have some basic like information. Like characters know about, they might remember different amounts of like information about, the states of the country that they live in, or just basic facts about the world or something like that. You're not like being reborn necessarily, but your memories of who you are and your life are separated off. They're segmented off. So you could be going through you could be single, you could be married with kids, you could be going through anything up there. The world, like they're talking in the early episodes, and one of the main characters starts talking about how he thinks that there's actually like an apocalypse up on the outside, on the surface, and they're just working down there. Like they have no information. They had no information. The series starts with one of I would say the two leading characters, Helly, waking up and not understanding what's going on, being confused. She's in a boardroom. She's being questioned by the other lead character, Mark, played by Adam Scott. And it's basically like the early part of the show is her figuring out what the hell is going on and what they do there. They work in a place called Macro Data Refinement. That's the name of their department at the company. And so they just kind of like click on numbers all day, and it's unclear what they are actually doing. Now, so there's 4 people in the department, and you might expect that you learn more and stuff starts to unfold and stuff, and it is very interesting. What is Lumen actually doing? What's going on? Who are they on the outside? We don't know. So there's a lot of interesting stuff about, why people get severed, a lot of good character stuff. I love so many of the I think every character is really well explored and fleshed. I'm trying not to be, because I am recommending the show. I don't want to be too specific before I get into like my observations. But I'll say that you should totally go watch it. It's a really, really good show. Totally worth it. Thumbs up from the Tigster. That gets 3 out of 3 moons. I don't know. Should I come up with my own rating system? Yes, if any of that sounds interesting to you, it's fantastically directed. Very minimal directing. I really like the effect that they do when they go down the elevator. I'm pretty okay. So what they do like what is it called? The Spielberg zoom, where they zoom out while adjusting the focal length, which gives it this. It kind of feels like parts of, like the center of the image is getting closer while the background of the image is getting further away. And I believe that they actually film they do this neat thing where they film the segments on the severed floor in what it would be called, a deeper focal length than on the surface, which has this effect of making all the hallways look longer I thought that was kind of neat. There's tons of like little bits of symbolism and stuff like that I could unpack, but I'm gonna give it a thumbs up unless you want to keep watching. Sorry, what did I mean? Thumbs up if you want to skip this and don't be spoiled. But yes, I am recommending it. You should jump on it. Both seasons are out now. Season 1 ends with a cliffhanger, so you should be good now. I would be very surprised if the final season ended on if this season, I don't know. It depends entirely on where it goes, but it feels like it's coming towards a conclusion of some sort. It's building up to something. I don't know how they would extend this even further. It feels like the plot's gone pretty far. Anyway, I want to make some observations about the series. So, I've never taken a philosophy class, so take everything I say with a grain of salt that I'm kind of bullshitting my way through. But I do think that the points that I'm making are kind of cogent. They might just not be rooted in like an exactly accurate understanding of these philosophies. Nietzsche had this idea that human beings had 3 core types of needs. Those were physical, mental, and spiritual. Physical are things like the things that our bodies need to survive, like food, water, clothing, some kind of physical stimulation like exercise. Mental needs were basically the need to not be bored, some kind of mental stimulation so that our minds don't get all static. Boredom is, boredom is a really easy way to drive someone insane. And then finally, spiritual needs, which are basically like abstract questions about our own personal identities. Like, who am I? Where do I belong? What is my who do I belong with? What's my community? What am I supposed to do in my life? What's my purpose? What's the meaning of life? And in order to provide for human society, we come up with institutions. We create institutions to fulfill these needs for us. So we have agriculture and the whole food pipeline that we have to fulfill our needs. Water and all that stuff to keep us alive. An entire network of all that and methods and industries based on that to fulfill our physical needs. Our intellectual needs are fulfilled by academic institutions, by copious amounts of existing knowledge and collections of information and stuff, although a lot of it does tend to be kind of self-motivated. We also have the arts, which I think are the arts and the sciences in a way are kind of are to further our intellectual stimulation. And then for spiritual needs, the primary institution that fulfills these historically is institutional religions. However, Nietzsche predicted that after the Enlightenment movement, that the human society would gradually get more and more secular, and he viewed this as a problem. Not that he loved religion, because he had many criticisms of organized religion, but he foresaw an issue where people would suddenly be left without an institutionalized, like standardized way to fulfill their spiritual needs. And this is what he called, would lead to what he called nihilism. A lot of people mischaracterize Nietzsche as a nihilist, but he was not. He thought he was very against nihilism. He saw it as a very, very bad thing that should not be dominant in culture at all. It was basically an enemy to society and like collective human psyche. The goal instead was to either create some way of of forming your own identity and self-purpose detached from institutions. That's what an Übermensch is. Not actually a Nazi thing. It was the idea of the Übermensch was someone who could essentially self-fulfill their spiritual needs without a system to guide them. Now I'm going to talk about Hegel. Whoa, Hegelian dialectics. So, Hegelian dialectics is just it's just a fancy word for a way of thinking. And Hegelian dialectics is the way of thinking that was put forward by, what's his name? George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. So essentially, Hegelian dialectics is a mindset, a line of reasoning that you apply to abstract concepts, things like liberty, government, love, freedom, things like that, and to pick them apart and to understand them better, I guess, in a sense. Basically, it goes in like 3 phases, which are usually boiled down to thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, which you've probably heard of before at some point. These are not, as far as I understand it, like apparently a lot of Hegelian scholars call that an oversimplification, but it's generally a pretty good understanding of it. Basically, the idea is that within each of these abstract concepts, there is some kind of fatal flaw that in the initial formation of ideas, the first formation is overly broad and general and is lacking in nuance. And it has these kinds of holes in it. Within each thing is its opposite. And once you understand that it has an opposite, that first thing, the thesis, is canceled out. It's nullified and it crumbled away. The antithesis is basically the exact opposite of it. And it's what is the opposite of that concept? But the antithesis, well, maybe being a little more nuanced, is itself flawed and also overly general and has its own holes. It is just the opposite of the thesis. They both have weaknesses. You just bounce from one to the other in whatever order you happen to arrive at them on. And the antithesis also kind of is negated and crumbles under itself. And from these, you reach the third phase, which is the synthesis, and it is the combination of the good points of the first 2 phases. It is you have started with one argument, you have poked holes in it, you've taken the exact opposite argument, and then you logic your way through it and figure it out to come up with a final premise for what you are, for what makes sense. So, if we look at the idea of spiritual needs and a spiritual institution, things that give people purpose, religion, let's say religion. The thesis of religion, you could say, is, I think that the point that the way that I read Severance, the message or one of the core themes of Severance is that the thesis of religion is traditional, organized, institutionalized religions. But because these religions are too absolute and are to rely too much on faith as means to guide people's lives, they produce doubt and skepticism, and thus over time, as people discover alternative ways of thinking, begin to weaken in different directions, in different ways. Sometimes breaking down into smaller sects. Sometimes it's just the overall weakening and a growing secularity in society. And that leads to the second phase, which is, I wouldn't call it atheism or science or skepticism. I would call it rationalism as the antithesis to religion. That a society that prefers fact-based, evidential-based like belief systems, things that are informed by measurable data and science. Science itself is a process. Science is not a thing. It's a process of collecting information that is as reliable as you can hope to get, and as a way of measuring the world. And this clashes fundamentally with many ideas of religious faith, because faith is belief without knowledge, without facts, that you have to bridge the gap yourself. The scientific process is the act of bridging the gap between your lack of understanding and understanding. So there are kind of like opposites to each other. However, science and rationalism lack that kind of intangible spiritual fulfillment that faith and religion provide. Therefore, they are also it's not a sufficient substitute for religion. So, what is the synthesis of these two ideas? What is the final form of religion in society? And Severance's argument, as I understand it, is that it is the corporation. The corporation is the final perfect religion. And I think this is really interesting because I haven't actually seen this before. Usually when you see arguments like this or messages like this, it tends to be consumerism instead. Consumerism is like a religion. I don't know if I would actually say that. Consumerism is like a lifestyle in a way, but it doesn't provide that much that religion does. I don't think it really gives people purpose. I don't think it really provides them with community and meaning. Maybe in some cases, but it's too decentralized. I think the idea of allegiance to a corporation as an employee which is what Severance is suggesting, actually is a lot more intriguing. And I think it makes a lot more sense. Because it's the strongest elements of both. Think about what being an employee to a company gives you. It gives you a purpose. It's the best because it provides all the benefits of the fulfillment of the needs. Both needs are met. When you're an employee, you don't just have like a purpose that you have to infer based off of faith and prayer. You are assigned a task. Imagine if God came down, the real God came down and said, hey, I need you to build 50 boats this year. That's your quota. And you're like, oh, well, okay, well, I guess God told me to. That's the same thing. It's, if you could hit a quota to know exactly what your purpose in life is it very ambitious? Well, it gives you ambition to hit the quota, but it's also very comforting because you know what you're supposed to do. You know who you are. They don't even know if the names that Lumen tells them they have are their real names. That is the thing. Like, you know that Mark S is Mark Scott because you see him on the outside, but like, the innies, as they call them, they have no idea. They don't know. His name could be Dave. It could be Dave Lichtenstein or something. The company provides you with identity. The company provides you with purpose. And the purpose is measurable. You can see it on a screen. You get a percentage that goes up every time you do your work based off of how much work you do. God tells you that he is pleased with you and gives you material benefits in the forms of these perks that they get, which are like, you can get a little picture, you can get a finger trap, you can get little perks, you can get like a dance party. These are material ways that your actions, your devotion to this idea, and your fulfillment of your purpose pays off for you. There's a thing called the break room that they have, which is not like a break room to relax. It's a break room to break them. That's kind of the idea. It's essentially a psychological torture room where they are placed in a dark room, and they have to recite an apology whenever they break code. They have to recite an apology over and over again until a lie detector proves that they actually mean it. Think about that. That is essentially confession. Imagine if you could go to confession and the priest had instead of the priest saying God forgives you, and you just have to take his word for it. Imagine you could go to confession and the priest had a scientific instrument, and lie detectors are kind of bullshit, but a scientific instrument that could prove that you are actually sorry and worthy of forgiveness. It is all of the it's the intangible needs, the spiritual needs of a human being. You know what department you're in, for instance, right? You have clear distinctions between departments. But the things which in traditional religions are abstract, and you just kind of have to believe, you have to have faith. The faith is replaced with numbers. The faith is replaced with hard data that you can see measured on a screen. The quantifiable information, the quantifiable nature of the reassurance of a rational viewpoint that provides the fulfillment of faith, of religious faith. And there are many. At first I'm like, oh, they kind of treat it like a religion. There's these little hints, and as you go on, no, it is a religion. It is a religion. They have boarding schools where kids are brought up being taught about the essentially prophetic, messianic, teachings of the founder of Lumen Industries, Keir Egan. Keir is Jesus. He is Jesus. He is Muhammad. He is Moses. He is the prophet and the lawgiver and the expansionist, and he is the one who, his purpose is your purpose that he gifts to the members, to the employees of Lumen Industries. His offspring and his children have a I guess kind of like a, oh snap, I'm a fucking amateur. I don't remember. The caliph is not, the caliph in Islam is not hereditary, right? Hang on. Is the caliph like elected? Yeah, the caliph is not. I forget what the Shia. Hang on, let me just look up. Right. Is it Grand Ayatollah? Is that the term? Like the offspring of Muhammad, or the lineage of Muhammad? Given to the highest level of the 12er Shia religious cleric with the authority. Okay. I don't know a whole lot about about Islam. I know a little bit, but they're basically that. They serve that function. They're the lineage that the Egan name is passed down through. And then so that is, those are the things that it provides. And for the most part, the main characters are anomalies in that system. Most people are pretty happy, or at least content. They have almost no idea that things down there are really weird. Like, we have these conceptions that you're like, oh my God, this is insane. Like, a job could never do this. A job should never be able to do this. It's a job. And that's why you need to be severed, right? In a religion, you're born into that. None of the things that your religion do are particularly strange to you because you're born into them and used to them. The severance procedure essentially it means that the severed employees, the innies, can basically be born into a new church, into a new religion, where they are indoctrinated into it and they serve it for however long they're with the company, and they don't know anything else. They don't know anything else besides what the church gives them. I guess you could call it a cult. I'd say that the difference between a religion and a cult is how much money they want from you. I guess Lumen doesn't ask for any money. They just ask for your labor. They just ask for your work, which you could maybe equate to that. They do pay you. That's what's so interesting. They don't pay the innies, but they pay the outies. Man, there's a lot of really interesting questions about like the distinction, because it's a really intriguing ethical conundrum. It feels like an episode of Star Trek, like a good episode of Star Trek in that way, where it gives you this sort of ethical conundrum that you never would have thought of, and then has the characters sorted out. Like, do you distinguish, okay, say you're innie, who has no idea about you or anything that you do, right? Anything about you on the outside. Say your innie gets like pregnant at work, right? Is that cheating? What is that? You know, if someone who is an innie has sex with someone who they believe is an innie but is actually an outie, is that like rape? How do you, if that's the other thing is, so let's say you're someone who your innie had sex and you find out about it. Are you like, how do you feel about that? Because you didn't consent. If you met the other person and, you know, on the outside, you may very well have not wanted to have sex with them, but the innies did. Is that like rape? It's such an interesting, and characters have different reactions to it. I get where I'm in spoilers, so I don't mind going into this stuff at this point. Did I mention I was in spoilers? If I didn't, I am officially. So like, a big point of contention is that yes, the innies are their own people, and when they leave the company, they essentially die. You know, they're never going to exist again. They are effectively being killed. And so the innies are their own people. But then you have, you know, these examples of like Dylan, one of the main characters. I love Dylan. Ends up getting, in the second season, he ends up getting visitation rights with his wife. His wife comes down to the severed floor and they meet in a room and they just talk. And you get some flashes of the outside world, and you get the impression that they have like 3 kids, and it just seems like they're really tired and they work way too much and they're just stressed out, and there's just not a lot of room for love in their relationship. You know, I think she's like a 911 operator, which is like a very tough job. I think I kind of get the impression that she works like multiple jobs too. And he goes and gets severed for 8 hours a day. And as she's talking, and you get these sorts of, as they're having these scenes of them meeting, and then later you see them on the outside, like it's just a strained relationship by circumstance. And the way that you kind of get the impression that when she's meeting the innie version of Dylan, it's like she feels like she's talking to the Dylan she knows, who has no memory. He has no memory of her. He doesn't know who she is. But she gets the feeling that despite that, it's like the Dylan that she knows, but more relaxed, like more stress-free. He's kind of funny. He has a good sense of humor. He really cares about his kids. He's so excited to learn about their lives and their family and all that. And it's like she's having this experience where like, oh my God, this is like my husband. If just all our stresses went away, this is like the real Dylan. And they hug, and I think they exchange a kiss at one point. And later, she tells him that she kissed his innie. And Dylan, for one reason or another on the outside, gets very upset. And I think the inclination might be that he's being unreasonable. But I mean, if you think about it, a lot of stuff in the show so far has been getting you on board with the idea that the innies are their own people. And like, hey, if an innie got pregnant at work or got someone pregnant, like you cannot be held liable for that as an outie. Like morally, ethically, you have to be considered a different person. But then like this thing happens where, you know, she kisses his innie, and he responds, the outie Dylan responds as if it's like she kissed another man. And it's weird because it's like she's cheating on him with himself, sort of, but he thinks of that as a different person. And there is a very reasonable logic as to why. And it's sort of like you can't have your cake and eat it too, sort of thing. And it's so intriguing, the different ways that people respond to it. There is a lot of stuff. There's a decent amount of stuff in the show about there's a different sort of analysis, which is very I would say probably the more left-leaning analysis, which is that the corporations don't see their employees as people. The innies are dehumanized. They're called animals. They are not the people in charge don't really think that they should have rights in the same way that people on the outside do. And the biggest difference between them and the outies is just that they are the one that works. The outies have lives and personhood, and they are deserving of moral consideration and all that. But the innies are just workers. They're worker drones. They don't deserve. Why would they need rights? And when they try to demand more rights, they're oh my God, you give them an inch and they take a mile. We got to keep them down. There's a clear class distinction message somewhere in there. Again, the show is not completed, so I can't really speak to all of it. I think that's probably where I'm going to cut it for now. I might have some more thoughts by the end. When I watch the last episode, and I might circle back to this. I will say, actually, okay, Tigan's Lock of the Week. I have a prediction for what the big mystery is, because we don't know what Lumen does. We don't know what the real thing is. The second season has been building up to this project that Mark has been working towards at the macro data refinement. It's called Cold Harbor. We don't know what Cold Harbor is. We don't know. You sort of learn a bit of what the work they're doing in macro data refinement does, like what the purpose is for, but it's unclear and very bizarre. You see the fruits of their labor in a certain way, but it's not like, what is this? What is the purpose of this? What are these projects? So my theory, my working theory, my call, my bet, my lock of the week is that the Lumen, I'm okay. It's These Are the Damned. My bet is that the big twist in Severance is that it's going to be just like one of my favorite movies, These Are the Damned, from 1962 to 65, depending on who you ask. One of my favorite movies, These Are the Damned. I'm guessing, oh God, spoilers for that movie. Fuck, should I spoil it? Spoilers for These Are the Damned as well. Why not? You should go watch it. It's free on YouTube. It's really, really good. So yeah, my theory is that they are basically doomsday prepping, and that the work that they're doing on the severed floor is to prepare for an inevitable, or what they see as an inevitable, apocalypse. and the severed employees are basically working towards or training some kind of contingency plan for when that happens. That's my guess. That's my assumption. It would be really funny if that happened, because Kat would have to admit that These Are the Damned is a good movie with a great idea. But yeah, so she's going to look really funny when she's wrong, because she doesn't like that movie as much as me. How dare she? Anyway, Severance is great. You should go watch it. I want to talk about 2 games. One is a video game, and one is maybe a video game sometimes. Real quick, I want to mention the first one of these. It's a little game called Surviving Mars. I got a real hankering to play a colony simulation management game, because there was a Frederick Knudsen video on Dwarf Fortress that you should go watch. It's called Boat Murdered. An episode of Down the Rabbit Hole on Boat Murdered. It's his most recent video as of now. It's a great story about a Dwarf Fortress campaign. This very cool thing that people would do where they would trade save files and then do like text let's plays to record what happened during their time with the colony that they were managing. And I was like, I got a hankering to play a colony management game, but I don't want to play Dwarf Fortress because I don't like Dwarf Fortress too much. I've tried to get into it 4 different times, and on the last time I actually broke through and actually sort of understood the UI and what I'm supposed to do and what you can do, and then I realized that I actually find the game kind of boring. So go figure. And I realized that I had a little game called Surviving Mars. This is a Paradox Interactive game. It is a simulation colony building game about creating a colony on Mars. You start off with just robotic drones that you are dedicating to tasks to like set up mines and collect resources, build up some structures and all that before you can construct a biodome for the colonists to live on. That requires multiple different kinds of life support that you have to build. You need water, you need oxygen. At the very least, you need electricity. You got to create a power grid. And then once you have a functional dome with life support, you can call colonists, order them from Earth. Colonists have different roles that you can order them with different jobs. They have different traits of positive and negative things, quirks and flaws, where maybe they are particular. Maybe they're a gambler, and if you have a casino in the biodome, there's a chance that they will just, hey, we're talking about gambling earlier. There's a chance that they will just completely like crash out, as the kids say, and have like a mental spiral. I'd say like part systems upkeep, like systems and management upkeep / expansion, and part people manager, where you have to make sure that the colonists have their needs met, their psychological, oh my god, like it's all wrapping back around, their psychological needs, that they have entertainment, that they have places to relax, that they're not being overworked. They have different jobs that incline them towards working at different buildings. There are certain things that will not run automatically, like a lot of factories and stuff that you need to produce more and more complex components or resources that you need to get more stuff. There's a tech tree. It's pretty fun. I like the multi-stage nature of it. I'm running a colony with two biodomes at this point, and you can send rovers to like explore and research anomalies around the map. It's really neat. I am not an expert in this genre, so it's not like the most. Maybe it's not the most impressive, crazy thing, but if the idea of starting a Mars colony sounds particularly fun or intriguing to you thematically, and I think that it executes on that theme pretty well, then check it out. Surviving Mars. Now, finally, because I am a little hungry and I kind of want to wrap this up a little bit. I learned how to play Mahjong. A friend of mine from the game store, same friend that I went to Cali Burst with, he's really into Mahjong, and like we make fun of him for it. And he asked me if he was going to like a Mahjong beginner's day at like a local Mahjong league. And my place was on the way, and he asked me if I wanted to come, and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. So I briefly skimmed a bit of an instructional video, and then I asked him a bunch of questions in the car on the way over, and we got there, and I played with a couple other beginners, and learned how to play Mahjong for like 6 hours. So you might know Mahjong as that game that's in a bunch of Japanese games that a lot of old Asian people play. I think of like old Chinese and Japanese men like sitting around a table gambling on Mahjong. And it's represented in a lot of I think Final Fantasy XIV has a Mahjong minigame. Yeah, so this is Riichi Mahjong. There are multiple different variations. Chinese Mahjong is, as I understand it, more casual. I don't know all the rule set distinctions, but that's kind of how it was explained to me. Most times when you go to play Mahjong, unless it's like explicitly, I think they call it Mandarin Chinese Mahjong. Most times that you go to play it, you're probably going to find Riichi Mahjong because it's more competitive. Mahjong rules. Mahjong is really fun. So the basic, unfortunately, it's also like not a game that I can say is like, actually, it's really simple. It is kind of complex, and it took me a while to pick up on a lot of the basics. So I'll try to explain it. So Mahjong is a 4-player game that's played with tiles. The tiles are very similar to cards. In fact, they even have suits. There are 3 different numbered suits, 1 through 9. And then there are a couple of what are called honors. Honors are kind of like suits, except they are like special symbols. There's like 3 different dragons of 3 different colors. And then there are the 4 winds, northeast, southwest. There are, with each of these different categories, every suit has 4 copies of each tile. It's not called this, I don't know what it's called. It's not like a deck that you draw from. You set up multiple different walls of two row tall columns, and then you go one by one drawing tiles. So basically, from that wall, picking it apart in order. So you start out with a hand of tiles, of 13 tiles. The goal of Mahjong is twofold. There are 2 conditions you have to meet. Number 1 is that you need a full, valid hand. I'm not sure if there's a specific term for it, but you need a full, valid hand. A full, valid hand is 14 tiles total, consisting of 4 triplets and a double. A triplet can be a sequence of 1, 2, 3. It can be 3, 4, 5. It could be 4. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6. Just like 3 numbers in a row, not wrapping around. So you can't do like 9, 1, 2. It does not wrap around. 9 and 1 are like the hard edges. It can be that. It can be 3 of a kind. And then you have like all 3s and all in the same suit. They all have to be of the same suit. And then a double is just 2 of a kind. So 4 triplets and a double for a total of 14 tiles. You start out with 13 tiles, and essentially what you're doing is that when it comes around to you, you draw a tile and then discard a tile. You draw a discard, until you have basically worked your hand into a position where you have a full or almost a full hand. At which point you are in tenpai. Tenpai is kind of like check, where you're 1 tile away from winning. The second condition is a little harder to describe, but that is that you must win while having a yaku. A yaku is basically a condition that you fulfilled. You can have multiple yaku. It's kind of like a little trick that you have that you do with your hand. It's so hard to explain. It's certain patterns and stuff. And what is the actual official explanation of what a yaku is? I know what it is. The problem is that it can come in many forms. It's a victory condition. It's a winning condition. You cannot win until you have a win condition. You actually have to build a win condition. Yeah, that's probably the best example of that. The best explanation of that. So, for instance, a very common yaku would be, what do they call it? All normals or something? All simple, something like that. It's the idea, and that kind of a hand would be every tile in your hand. When you complete your hand, every tile is the numeric suits. You don't have any of the special honors in your hand. And if you have that and you get your final tile, you call different things based off of like how exactly you're winning. But you can basically declare your victory. If you draw it yourself, you can say tsumo, and that means that you top decked it yourself. There are also ways that you can basically steal pieces from the opponent. Doing so without opening your hand is called ron. When they discard something. There are also ways that open your hand. So pon and chi are two different methods. They're two different callouts that you can make. They're like little special moves you can use. A chi is when the opponent directly to your left, which would be the player who goes before you, discards a tile that you could use to complete a triplet. Before you draw your own tile, you can call chi, and then you can present to prove that you can complete the triplet, and take the tile from their discard pile, or their cut pile, as it's called, and then take the 3 that you got and then push them off to the side and basically reserve them. Those are locked in place. You can't touch those tiles anymore. Pon is a similar idea, except you take it from... What's the difference? Hang on. Chi is to complete a sequence. A pon is to complete a triplet. Okay, that's what it is, right? So the chi is specifically if you could complete a sequence of like three sequential numbered tiles. A pon is for like a 3 of a kind. And a pon can be called from anyone on the table. So why wouldn't you just do that every single opportunity you get? Because doing so and taking those tiles and moving them off to the side does what's called opening your hand up. And certain yaku become impossible to get once you have opened your hand up. The rules dictate that they require a closed hand. One of the most common yaku is Richi, the name of the game. So what Richi is that basically if you have a closed hand and you are 1 tile away from winning, you are in tenpai, as it's called, your checkmate state, you can call Richi. So you would do your draw, basically do the draw and discard that would put you into tenpai, and then you get to call Richi, and you bet 1,000 points. I should mention that Mahjong is played over the course of multiple rounds, so you will play through multiple different hands, resetting after someone wins or you go through the entire pile. So you call Richi, you bet 1,000 points, you put that up, and then that is essentially saying I am locking down my hand. And from this point, you're basically in top deck mode. You cannot discard anything from your hand. It's locked in place. So you can draw a tile. If it's not what's called your weight, the weight is the tile that you need to win, the tile or tiles that you need to win. You can have multiple, depending on the patterns in your hand. If it's not one of your weights, you just discard it immediately. You can self-draw it, but you're not just in top deck mode. That's not your only means to victory. If anyone discards one of your weights, weight is in like you're waiting on it. If anyone discards one of your weights, you can call Roan and take it and complete your hand and win the round. That means that once someone calls Ricci, there is a brand new risk-reward game to be played, because you have to decide, potentially, any discard you make, any cut, could win your opponent the game. And here's the thing. I mentioned that it's played over multiple rounds. You start with a certain amount of points, I think 25,000, and then you put up different amounts of points. Actually, Ricci, I believe, is the only one where you actually bet points. When you win, depending on the hand that you won with and how many Yaku you got, you can get multiple Yaku in one hand. And once you win, you basically count them up, and there's a whole like system for it. I don't understand it. It's kind of complicated. My friend is also not an expert at it. Online simulators make it easy, but they basically stack multiplicatively. So you can get like a lot. If you get like 3 or 4 Yaku, you can get like big points. Well, where do you get your points from? It depends. So if you win by self-draw, it's sumo, as it's called, a sumo. Everyone at the table pays out to you. It's split among the rest of the table, with the player designated as dealer paying more. The dealer always goes first. If you win by Roan, by fucking calling someone's discard out and they won you the game, that player is the only one to pay you out. So you do not want to get Roan, dude. You do not. When your opponent calls Ricci, you don't want to get Roan. You don't want to be that guy. Because that feels bad. That shit feels like, oh, especially if they have a big hand. They pulled off some kind of crazy combo in their hand. So there's a whole defensive dimension to the game where you can hit a point where you're like, okay, I'm not necessarily, I don't know if I can win. I don't have an amazing hand for winning right now, but I can try not to lose. There's winning, there's losing, and there's in between. And as long as you can make sure that you are not the one to get roaned, you can at least protect your points. And kind of hold out. There's a lot of different strategies you can do. You can go for really early aggressive hands that don't take the time to build up a lot of Yaku. Some people just try, for instance, if you get the dealer spot, you might want to hold on to that for as long as possible. When you win, you stay the dealer. So you might want it otherwise it rotates. If you want to hold on to the dealer position, which means that would you get paid more if you I don't remember. You can go for like really fast, quick strategies that can win you early but don't necessarily count for a lot of points. There are more long con strategies. A lot will be determined by your first hand, your opening hand, like how many honors did you get? So for instance, another kind of Yaku is as if you have 3 of the dragons, if you get a triple of dragons. So there's red, green, and white dragons. Let's say I open with 2 white dragons in my opening hand. I can go, ooh, I'm going to hold on to that. Because if anyone discards, the honors people tend to discard those very quickly because there's a limited amount of them. There's only four white dragons. There's only 4 green dragons. There's only 4 red dragons. There's only 4 of each type of wind. So often you'll be in a situation where you might have 2 of the winds or one of the winds, and then 2 of them get discarded by other players, and you're like, well, I can't do anything with this now. This one, they're literally like, there's only one more wind of like the south wind, for instance, that I've got. There's only one more left. Someone could have it. It could be left in the deck. It wouldn't matter. A 3 dragons or a 3 winds. Sorry, specifically. Oh my God, this is a fucking complex ass thing. So there are round winds and like seat winds. The round wind is either east or south, as I understand it, which is essentially like the set. So you play very commonly, like how many sets you play to. Commonly, I think the standard is 2 sets, which is 4 hands. So the first set will be on the east wind, and the second will be on the south. You also have a round wind. The dealer is always east, and then you can have like a compass that shows. So the one opposite the dealer is going to be west, and then to their sides is going to be north and south. So if you're south, if you are, so the south, so the round wind or your specific like wind that you've got, your seat wind, I think they call it, getting 3 of those is also a Yaku. If I'm south wind and we're on the east round, if I have the north wind, that doesn't count for a Yaku. I could still get like a triplet of them, but it wouldn't count for a Yaku. If I get the south wind in my hand, if I open with 2 south winds and I am the south wind in my seat, I can hold out until someone discards a south wind tile and then pawn it and steal it off, because that particular Yaku does not require you to have a closed hand. So you're like, oh, I can hold on to this, and then the rest of my hand, I can just work it into a position and not be so aggressive and going for cheese and pawns and stuff like that. Or you could just like aggressively chi and pawn for stuff just over and over again. Although that is very dicey because it makes your hand less flexible. Essentially, the more you open your hand up and the more tile sets you push off to the side by these kind of like stealing call-out methods, the more you are committing to the hand that you have left. So you could get yourself into a technically unwinnable position because, you have like a 3 and like a 2 and a 3 of the pins, which are like the circle suit. You have 2 pin and 3 pin in your hand. You can win, and you need a 3 of. You already have a merge. You have a 2 of a kind, and you have 3 triplets off on the side. Or merges is what they're called when it's 3 specifically. You've got 1 match already done. Don't have to worry about that. And 3 merges. And so you need 1 more merge. And you can only win if you get a 1 pin or a 4 pin, because that would complete 1, 2, 3 or 2, 3, 4. You could also conceivably pick up another, if you happen to draw a duplicate of 2 or 3, you could replace the other one, or you could replace, the opposite one, and you could try to go for a 3 of a kind. But it's like, actually that would limit you. That'd probably be worse because you can win off of 2 different tiles if you're waiting on a triplet or a sequence, sorry. But if you're waiting on a 3 of a kind, that's only 1 tile that can win you the game. So you've basically worked yourself into a kind of difficult position. You have to be very confident if you want to like open your whole hand up. You have to be really confident. So yeah, I mean, I played for like 6 hours. I played a lot of fucking Mahjong. And at the start, I was very slow and I took a lot of time to think about my hand. Regular Mahjong plays much faster. You get maybe like 5 seconds. You're kind of expected to have made your decision within 5 seconds and then move on. Because it was a beginner casual day, they were slow. They were really nice. There were a couple guys there who were very helpful and really good at teaching. And they helped me out a lot. They gave me a lot of advice for strategy and stuff like that. And apparently I did pretty well for it being my first day of ever playing and having learned the game on the car ride over. So I have to admit it's bad. I've installed Mahjong Soul on my phone. Mahjong Soul is an online client for Mahjong that is made by Yostar, which was crazy to me. When we were going over to... Yostar is the makers of Azurlane. When we were going over, I was like, is it generally like an older... I kind of associate Mahjong with like old people. And we get there and it's like, it's mostly just like nerds. It's a bunch of young nerd guys and a couple ladies. And I was like, okay, well, it's a surprisingly young crowd from what I guess the stereotype in my mind would suggest. And then I look at Mahjong Soul and I'm like, oh, this is how they get all the Asians. This is how they get all the Asians. Is they get like big titty anime girls to play Mahjong. There are male characters. There's male characters in Mahjong Soul. There's an entire male cast, but you never see them on loading screen art. You never see them in promotional stuff. It's all just like cute girls playing Mahjong. Some of them with a lot of cleave going on. It's like, this is how you get the Asian gacha addict. Because there's gacha for like cosmetics. It's crazy. It was very weird as someone who played Azurlane for several years. It was very weird to load up that game and discover that not only was it Yostar, but it is also like the same artists and character designers and UI style. Obviously, the menus are different because they have, the games have different needs. But like, so many things were evoking Azurlane memories of like back in high school for me. It was crazy. It was very humorous. So I've mainly just been playing against AI so that I can get more comfortable with it. Honestly, I'm just kind of having a blast playing against AI. I might graduate up to like playing against real people online. They have ranked, of course. Because Mahjong is really fun. It is a really fun game of risk versus reward on multiple different levels, where it kind of evolves over the course of the game. At first, you're trying to like figure out. There's kind of a fundamental skill of what hands, how you can get a hand into a more favorable position, what calls you should and shouldn't use, and when. And then there's like a different risk reward that is very like mental, and like you're checking what everyone's discarded, because the discard piles are public, and you're checking what people have discarded to see like, okay, I don't see any of bamboos. Sozan is what they're called, the bamboo suit. I don't see any Sozan in their discard pile. They're probably I don't see anything in the cut piles. Someone's probably hoarding a lot of them, or that everybody's got a lot of them. So it might be dangerous for me to go in on because I might not have as much that I can take from. But it also could be dangerous if someone calls Ricci, because I might just be giving up. If I cut any so's at this point. I could be giving up the winning tile and getting really screwed over. It's a really fun game. I would genuinely recommend going and learning Mahjong. It is fairly complicated. There's a lot to keep track of. But once I got into the swing of things, it felt really good to just sit at a table, and you can play the whole game silently, save for callouts. It felt really good to just sit at a table and just like draw, cut, draw, cut, draw, cut, and pay attention to my hand and think and strategize and kind of push it. I got to call Ricci a few times. I won like 1 or 2 rounds, and I felt pretty good about it. Yeah. Thumbs up. I'm recommending the game of Mahjong, the ancient game of Mahjong. Yeah. And I think with that, I'm going to be drawing this to a close because my throat is tired. If you've been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, but please phrase them in the form of a question because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. I am working steadily on the new video. It has been a very intensive script writing process. I spent probably a total of like 6 or 7 hours going over 30 minutes of footage. Closer to 40 minutes, actually. That was just for the note-taking process. I am like maybe halfway done with the script. I realized I had to go back and take a bunch of notes for future reference. So it's coming along. It's coming along. I think it's really cool. I think it's going to be a cool video. And hope that you guys are around for it. I got Patreon. I got a coffee. Oh, yeah, by the way, because I talked about taxes earlier, coffee income is not taxable because I don't offer any benefits. It is just a donation jar. Patreon income is taxable because I provide something. I provide benefits to my patrons, so that is providing a service. But coffee is basically just, hey, if you want to give me money, you can give me money, and I don't provide anything on that platform. So if you don't want me to have to pay more taxes at the end of the year, consider donating to me on coffee. They're both. I don't mind either one. Patreon, I guess, is a little more I think you can subscribe on coffee. Whatever is your preference. Yeah. I have been Tygan, and I am signing out. Bye.